Great. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Sorry I'm not there with you. If you hadn't heard, I have COVID, so just keeping my distance and quarantining. I wanted to tee up Dr. Pinel's lecture and today's session with just a reminder about the progression of leadership development. And we've shown it many times, the three concentric circles of leadership development. If you recall, the center circle is, the initially focusing in on oneself, and then progressing to the middle circle, which is working with others, your colleagues, children and families. And then that outer circle is working more at the systems level with policy and advocacy and systemic change. So, this, of course, we're, quite a ways through our program, and now we're in that outer circle part. So just wanted to refresh your memories on that and keep that context in mind. Now, Mike, if you put up the slide that I sent, just wanted to talk about some leadership characteristics. Great. And I wanted to, and Jane and I were talking, and Mike and I were talking, and this is something we talk about every year. The importance of, just some general practices that are good professional practices, behavior, things like being on time, showing up to things that you say you're going to attend. And the importance of that, not only for just for being a good professional, but how important that is as a leader. And we wanted just to open it up to discussion and your thoughts on looking at these characteristics of a good leader. And this is a slide that I shared, I think it was in October when we focused our face-to-face session on leadership. But how do you think being on time, showing up when you say you're going to show up, or not doing those things, how do you think that would impact these characteristics?
There you go. Okay. So you said what will happen if people like didn't show up?
Yeah, let's say someone says they're going to attend, they have a meeting, and that something comes up and they can't attend and they don't show up. Or let's say they tend to be, late to meetings, phone calls, whatever. How do you think that would impact one's, if these are characteristics of being a good leader, how do you think some of those behaviors and practices could impact one being a good leader? Looking at those things, do you think it would impact any of those?
Yes, because it would just show people that person has like no regard, like that they're not really thinking of like the importance of the role that they have. Because like, I mean, we all have like inconveniences in life, but it's like, it's if you would tell people what's going on, then they're more understanding than just not saying anything at all. And people will be like, oh, well, they just don't care. So even if that's not the case, that's how people will take it because you didn't say anything. So it will have people look at you in a different light as well, maybe they don't respect, or they don't care about their role, or like maybe they don't take being a leader seriously.
Thanks, Alicia. So it seems like you're hitting on that number 10 there, respect. It can make someone, whether it's intentional or not, could make someone feel like they're not respected.
Yeah, and it also, I think part of what she said has to do with number 3 of just communication. If something comes up, just communicating, because there's a disconnect. You were describing, sorry, maybe you do care, but you're not showing it because you're not communicating. Leo.
Thank you. What I was gonna say is that people won't take your product or what you're trying to tell them seriously because you keep making, promises that you're not really keeping. So it's gonna affect you in the long run because the word gets around very easily that you're not a person that's very reliable. And for me, in my point of view, like for me, it's really hard to like admit that I need help and sometimes I miss out on doing certain things because I'm afraid to ask for help and I get overwhelmed and I want to do everything on my own. But I've learned this year that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay when you say, "Hey, I can't do this. Can you help me because I'm kind of stuck?" And I feel like that's a big part of, like my colleague said, that's a big part of showing. Sometimes things come up and you get overwhelmed and it becomes a bit much, but it's up to you if you communicate that with people to show people, hey, something came up, but he still cares and he's still here. It's all about communicating, but you also have to be respectful. And if you're not going to be 100% committed to something, then don't do it.
You know, thanks, Leo. You hit on several, I heard you hit on several of these characteristics. One is just your integrity. How people are going to trust you, or, doing what you say you're going to do. I also heard you talking, as Alasia did, on, communication and communicating what's going on. And you also hit on I think number 4 is self-awareness. And part of that is, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, because part of it is, for some folks, this is, time management, kind of taking on a lot of things is in their wheelhouse. And sometimes it isn't. And, just being aware of where your strengths lie and working on, if there's areas you need help or you want to grow, asking for that, and not, feeling this is a safe place to do that and to grow in that area. And then I also heard you hitting on the respect part. And one of the things also, Leo, that, kind of stood out for me is like that what happens is your word, people listen to your words, and your word is everything. So if you need to change, if you say something and you're not going to be able to uphold your word, that communication piece is going to be so important to share that, so that, that communication can go a long way to not having trust fall apart.
So I had something also. A quote that I heard a long time ago, but has really stuck with me through the years, is that I think everyone kind of knows the phrase, like, words can lie, but actions speak the truth. But it was kind of a twist on that. That was, words can lie, actions can lie too, but consistency speaks the truth. And that's always really stuck with me. Because if you say, like, oh, I care to be here, I want to be on time, but you're always late, then that's not really showing me that what you're saying is true, and your actions are also mimicking it. So I do think it's really important to communicate what's going on and ask for help when needed. But I do think that if it is a consistent issue, then that is not something that communication can necessarily always get you out of. And you need to be self-aware enough at that point to be like, hey, I'm always 15 minutes late. This was me. I was this person. I am always exactly 15 minutes late for everything. So and not necessarily important things, but like even just hanging out with people, I'd say, you need to tell me to get there 15 minutes before it starts. Tell me that it starts 15 minutes before it is. And I know what time it actually starts, but I need in my head to believe that it starts that much earlier. And it's worked pretty well. Sometimes I'm still late by a few minutes, but like I'm aware enough to know that I am a late person. And so I've worked on that. And if I'm going to be late, then you can still communicate and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I promise I value your time. This is something I struggle with. And just making other people aware of it.
Yeah, no, really good point, because I think people get tired of, hearing excuses. I'm sorry, I was late this time because of blah, blah, and whatever. It really is those actions and being aware. And I don't know if you can tell people to tell you the meeting is a different time, but, maybe in your own, in your own calendars, if that's an issue, like, you tend to run a certain amount late, that, some people set their watches 5-10 minutes fast, or, and we can share some, I was looking, before today, and I can share with Mike to put in Canvas, just some techniques of ways to, if you struggle with time management or being on time, some hacks, that you can do to do that. I think that, and I have to admit, there are certain people in my life that I just tell them it's more than family things that, it starts at half an hour early. But, I really think that actions and consistency are so important. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and then I was just gonna say, like, if we do find ourselves in a leadership position where we're noticing that like maybe a specific team member is showing up consistently late to that 7 a.m. Friday meeting for whatever reason, then I think it's also part of our responsibility as a good leader to reach out and say like, hey, I've noticed the past couple of times you're kind of late for this meeting. Well, it's because the school schedule doesn't line up and I'm late dropping my kid off, that I'm late here. So just if we're already in that leadership position, having that relationship with our team members and being able to ask them, kind of what's going on, how can I help?
Yeah. And, I hear you kind of touching on both influence and empathy there and communication. And I think that, also, just back to the importance of as a leader, practicing these things is because people look to you as a leader and they will model themselves. If there's a leader who doesn't really value being on time or starting meetings on time, people will pick up on that and they'll just adopt the same things thinking, oh, that's our culture. So I think that's a really good point. And being empathic to those that might be struggling, and also being flexible. If someone has a consistent scheduling problem, maybe the time could be changed.
I want to make a comment to put this also in context of this group. We're not talking about this because this is a problematic group. You guys are pushed to the limit this year with this extra 300 hours on top of everything else you're doing. But we've been seeing, and I think, Mike and Sharon would agree, we've been seeing these professional behaviors really at excellent professional behaviors with this group. So we're not having this conversation because there's a problem here. We're having this conversation because we're talking about leadership, kind of with the big L of advocacy, the kinds of things Deborah Peinels is doing, and you're going to hear from others this afternoon. But we also wanted to interject the leadership with the little L, or just, professional behaviors and respect. I think, Alasia, you made a really good point. A lot of these things about being on time, letting someone know if you can't get something done. A lot of these are just a matter of showing respect for the other people on your team. And it really, again, we just wanted to kind of bring us back down onto ground on the things that you're doing every day that are leadership skills that you don't think is leadership skills. They're just kind of the habits that you form going along. And the comment about working on a team and maybe somebody late, or how often have you had a team assignment and somebody, you got 5 people working on an assignment and it's due on Thursday, and one person kind of procrastinates and doesn't get their part done until Wednesday at midnight? It's kind of painful, isn't it? For the others, you want to be empathic and all of that. Again, I'm not suggesting, I'm not going on, there's not an issue here. It's just that we wanted to talk about these things because they are fundamental for your professional success. Janie, I'll bring it over.
And also, just to add to that, particularly today, talking about advocacy and policy, and they'll talk about it later this afternoon, but you might only have 5 minutes with a staffer or legislator to pitch your case. So you better be on time and you better have it together, because I've been in that position and I wasn't ready the first time I did it. And it was, okay, bye. You don't have anything to say. They're not giving you the time.
So I was going to tell, this is like a true confessions kind of thing. So we had a leadership call yesterday, and we were talking about the plans to go over this today. And I am writing 2 chapters for an edited text that are just a struggle. And I'm overdue. And so after our conversation, and the editors know me well, and I've written chapters for them before, but after our call yesterday, I immediately sent an email to the editors giving them an update for the chapter I've not yet sent to them. And they wrote back a really nice note. So I think that's just, no matter what leadership role you're in, whether it's a capital L or a little L, I think it's really important to, communicate, and they were very appreciative.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone was going to be saying something, but thank you, for these last few comments. And, I think that, I can speak from my own experience that, I did not, a time management was not in my wheelhouse, earlier in my career. It is now because I understand. And the first time that someone pointed it out to me when I was late for something, and they explained to me, it made me feel like I didn't respect them. And I was just so taken aback by that, because that would never be my intention. And I know when I've talked to others kind of sharing that same feeling, people don't always think about it in that way. So I think just sometimes just reframing those practices and how it might make another person feel, or how it can, hurt your reputation. I think it's very important just to be mindful of that and that self-awareness. The other thing this is one that I've come across in recent years, is just the one where you say, let's say you say to someone, I'll give you an update once I have it, hopefully in the next couple weeks, let's say 2 weeks pass, you have no update. And I think what happens, on that one, I think it's probably very important. And this is both whether you're whichever end you're on, to communicate. Just say like, hey, I know I thought I'd have news for you. It's been a couple weeks. I still don't have anything. Haven't forgotten about you. But sometimes like that falling into the black hole, and sometimes our world, even as leaders, we don't control when decisions are made. But just being mindful that if you said to someone you're going to get back in a couple weeks or a week's time, whatever that is, whatever you've said, people will remember that. And, just because you have no news, they won't know that you don't have news. So that was just another one that to me didn't seem maybe quite as obvious, but wanted to bring that one up as well, because that's one I experience all the time. Oh, and one other thing, I could talk about this all day and love to hear your thoughts on this. As Mike was mentioning, that when we talked this afternoon about advocacy and policy, so much of that, one, as Mike said, you might only have 5 minutes, and you can blow that permanently if you're not a no-show or you're late. But also it's just about relationship building, and you want to, come out of the gate strong and be in that consistency piece too, of just, really valuing that relationship and building that trust, having your word and your actions have meaning.
I love this conversation. Thanks for all the perspectives that have been shared so far. One thing that I was thinking about when I read those characteristics was, I think early on in my career, I believed that to be a really good leader, I had to say yes to everything. And that, being a good leader is showing up and doing it all, as well as you could. I've learned that one of the ways in which to demonstrate leadership is sometimes to say no and to do what you're doing really well. And I think that that's been probably my most important professional lesson throughout my career in academia so far, is that what I do and what I commit to, I feel really proud about. And I feel like I exhibit more of those 10 characters of what a good leader is than if I tried to do everything. So that's just an additional perspective about sort of the way in which we can show leadership, is sometimes it's okay to say no. And I think it's probably hard for this group to do that.
And Leah, that's a great point. And I think that also can tie into delegation, because part of being a good leader, delegation, I mean, it may feel like a dump on somebody, like you're offloading, but for that person, if you're sharing the leadership responsibilities. So, and it's not to delegate to only one person, or, I've been known to, reward my best performers with more work, but, really being mindful about delegation so that you can be your best in what you take on, and also sharing the leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I walk over, I want to comment on something that Leah said about, being able to say no, and then also having the patience. We heard from Deb Peinels, it didn't all happen at once. Her advocacy roles and her increasing responsibility and influence has come over a career. And so, give yourself a break, be patient, recognize that you can't do it now, but maybe we can try that later.
I was just thinking about how like sometimes people tend to like take on a lot of things because, and especially like in society, like in my culture at least, it's like the more you do, it seems like the more like productive you come off as. But that's just I realize that's just not healthy, and like we can't be 100% to every single thing we take on. So it's like so I've just now realized this because I'm a grad student now. So like being in grad school is completely different from undergrad. And like things require, like you have to nurture the things you take on, you have to really nurture it, because if you try to take on too many things, you can't be 100%. It's better to, like Leah said, it's better to take on like really things that you're really passionate about and nurture those and pour into those, then take on a bunch of different tasks and you end up just like crashing and burning on every single thing. And also I think in a way those type of experiences can breed good leaders, because essentially that's when that self-awareness will come along, and it's like, well, maybe I'm not one of those people that can balance a billion things. Some people can do it, and I applaud those people. But you realize, well, maybe I need to examine my time management, or am I able to prioritize all these different things, So I think those type of experiences, like in the beginning, help people become good leaders eventually.
Thank you. Yeah. We're all thoughtful of the time because it's lunchtime. And the food has arrived. Any more comments from anyone here or Sharon?
No, I just want to say one thing that you just raised a good point. One other piece about being on time is ending on time. And and we went over 3 minutes, so I apologize. I'm one of those people that if I'm in a meeting and it's supposed to end at noon, as soon as it hits 12:01, I'm mad, and so enjoy your lunch and be mindful on the other end too of not keeping people over. So